We have talked about definitions, we have talked about child development in correlation with poverty, and now let's take a turn to talk about standardized testing. It's a very taboo topic. We are, at least I was of the generation of the FCAT, and I remember having just taken it, and I remember meeting people who had passed it or did not successfully pass it. And I remember seeing the different stress levels it would cause. And we were in such a young age, we shouldn't be stressed out by things. When it comes to standardized testing, it's become a measurement of school accomplishment. And yet, these tests that are forced upon young children come with a series of consequences. I mean, they do. You're basically telling children that they are above average, average, or below average. And you also have the fact that because of these tests that are given to such young minds, they're being stressed out and they're literally dictating real estate prices that fall in correlation with local schools. It's kind of insane when you think about the concept that because of the score of a school, the housing prices near it kind of irrelevant to it because people want to go to these schools. And yet it all comes down to just really labeling a child's ability to read in the areas that they might want to improve on. Does this labeling really accurately do it? Is it really come down to above average, average, or below average? And the reason why this is so important in correlation with poverty is then you have the point that there are some schools that are in higher risk area and lower income rates. And in reality, literacy education programs are dictated by test scores. And those test scores are very relevant in their funding. It's very relative that if student test scores increase, it's implied that the reading instruction at that institution is successful. While meanwhile, if the schools do not improve, or if they do decrease, as in the case of some schools in high-risk areas or lower-income neighborhoods, it can be assumed that the reading instruction is ineffective, and standardized testing only focuses on two types of student outcomes, and that's cognitive strategies and skills, as well as content learning, content area learning. And do these test scores really accurately measure that accomplishment? Why are policymakers so hell-bent on having them dictate the pay for teachers? Why are these test scores dictating the pay for administration, or how much funding goes into that reading instruction program or school-related material? I mean, the labeling of above average and below average is used to determine the contribution of literacy development and these students' reading growth, when in reality, they don't determine how enthusiastic a child is about reading. They're not dictating what level of reading habits these children have, or if they consider themselves successful or not. It's not taking into consideration a multitude of factors. It's only taking, again, into consideration two things: cognitive strategies and skills, as well as content area learning. And these test skills, I mean, if we really want reading instruction programs to foster readers who are, motivated and engaged, highly just ready to go, highly independent, metacognitive, then standardized testing is not the best way to assess this information related to these important outcomes. I mean, again, the test score of a school determines the level of funding and pay the teachers will have, and also dictates the kind of neighborhood that will be in, and also that school help dictates real estate prices. Everything's kind of correlated, and it all comes down to the pressure that we're putting on young children to perform at above average, average, or below average. I mean, these tests will only provide some sort of partial evaluation of successful reading programs. So standardized testing is, used with frequency, there is really no research that links standardized testing with increased reading achievement, as well as their limited ability to describe reading development. So let's move on to the next slide, where we talk about core curriculum and standards and how that's affected by poverty.